Hello developers, and welcome back to Elixir Pro. In today's video, we're going to do an introduction with GraphQL. The idea of this video is to set up the dependencies necessary so that we can play around with GraphQL using Phoenix. We're going to create our first query and mutation. We're going to consume this query mutation in the GraphQL interface in our browser. This is probably going to be a series of 2 or 3 videos, so I hope you enjoy. So let's get started after the intro. So let's get started. First thing that we're gonna be doing is create our project. So mix-pjax-new. We're gonna be calling is GraphQL without the -- live. So let's create our project and fetch all our dependencies. Okay, now let's cd into our application. So cd to GraphQL. So let's go for git init. Git add -- all, git commit -- sign message. We're going to call this initial commit as usual. And then let's start properly our application. The first thing that we're going to be doing is adding 2 dependencies into our mix file. So open your mix file and go here to the deps. And we're going to be adding, the first one is the Absinthe. So we can come here and go to installation on the top, and we can grab the Absinthe 1.5. So let's grab this one. Now let's paste it here. Okay. And the other one that we're gonna be fetching is the Absinthe Phoenix. We can then go for the. Oops, I think I'm gonna need to go to the GitHub page. So Absinthe Phoenix, and we need to grab this one as well. Okay, so now let's go back to mixdeps.get. We're going to now, you see that we already fetched the Absinthe plug as well. Okay, we're gonna need this to forward our requests in our router. So let's open our router now, and we're gonna need to create another scope here. So let's create a scope, and name of this scope is gonna be graph with I here, QL. Do end, and we're going to do a forward. So all the requests that are going to come from this one is going to go for Absinthe. Let me actually start our application so we can get some auto completion. Okay, there we go. So we should have some auto completion now. Absinthe dot plug dot GraphQL, and we also need to create a schema, and our schema is going to be called intro-GraphQL web.schema. Okay, so now that we create this schema, let's create properly the file for it. Let's go back here, and on the lib folder, in the web folder, we are going to create on this file here, on this level here, a file called schema. So schema.ex. Let's create our schema, and here we're gonna need to use absinthe.schema, right? And then we can create our first query. So query do end. We're gonna be create our first query, which is going to be a dummy query. So field dummy, and we are going to pass here that we're gonna return an integer, and to that we need to call a function called resolve. And this resolve receives a function which is a 3-arity function where the first argument is the entity, which we're not going to use, the arguments, which we are not going to use right now, and the context, which we are not going to use as well. And then this is returned for us an OK tuple or a narrow tuple. We're going to return an OK tuple with the number 5. Just check there on our browser. So we can go here and run this query dummy. And you see here it's returning 5. If we change this here to 10, we're going to be receiving 10. Okay, so there we go. We have our first demo query. Right now I'm going to create using the Phoenix generators the context for a blog post. Okay, so let's go back here in our shell. Let's go mix-pjax-chain-context. We call it blog, and we're gonna be receiving post. For the table posts, we're gonna have a name, a description, And right now we are not going to have anything besides this thing, because it's going to be like a pretty simple one. We're going to take a look more depth in the next series of this series, how we can actually work with associations and data loader. Okay, so let's run this application here. We can see that our context has been created. Let's go there. If we check here on the blog.ex, we have all the functions to create to do the CRUD of the post. Okay, and let's create a post in our terminal. So this is gonna be intro GraphQL dot blog. Maybe we need to recompile with intro GraphQL dot blog dot create post, and we're gonna be passing here name, first post, and description. This is the first post description. Okay. Oh, we forgot to run our migration, so let's go back here to mix acto.migrate. All right, mix. We might need to mix acto.reset. And there we go. Now we should be fine. So once again, let's try to create our post with intro to GraphQL .blog .create post. Let's go once again, name, first post, and I'll go for description. This is the first post description. Okay, so once we create now, we see that our post has been inserted in our database. If we do blog.list posts, we see that we have our post inserted there. And if you do again like get post, passing our first ID, we got the post back. And I show these functions to you because we're going to be using them right now in our schema, so that we can like list all the posts, fetch one post, and actually we're going to create other posts and list to see that we have like more posts, more than one post. So let's go back to our code editor. So let's go back, let's go to our schema. And now instead of dummy, we are going to create a query for get post by ID. Instead of return any integer, we're going to return a post. But right now, if we check on our compilation, if we do a recompile here, we're going to say that we have no object, there's nothing defined in our schema as post. And to define this schema for our GraphQL, we need to go back to our schema. On the bottom here, let's create a new object. We're going to have the type post to end, and we need to say all the fields that this post is going to have. So the first field is going to be an ID, which has the type ID, the field name, which is a type string, and the field description, which also has the type string. And as you see right now, we have no more errors. If we recompile, see right now that we have no errors. Okay, but we said here that we're gonna get the post by ID, and right now we're gonna be using the second argument of this function here. So to do that, we can call this function, this function from the Absinthe.schema called args. And args, or I don't know if it's arg or args. And to describe that, we just need to type Absinthe.schema.notation.arg. It's arg. Okay. And inside arg, we're gonna be passing an ID, and this is gonna be of type new ID. Okay. And now we need to pattern match here on the args. So let's get rid of this args with underscore, and let's create a new map with ID, and this is gonna receive here an ID. Right now we have like this ID reserved for our inner callback. So right now we need to call intro to GraphQL .blog.get post by ID, and there we go. Now we can try out our query on the browser once again. So here I'm going to remove this dummy here, and we can do get post. Oh, we actually need to refresh the page. Get post by ID. We said we're going to be passing an ID, so ID 1. And we're going to need to return from that post. Let's go return the ID, the name, and the description. Okay. So if we run our application, our query now, you see we got the post ID, we got the description. This is the first post description, the ID, and the name. So there you have it. This is our first query. Let's go and now create our first mutation. Okay, so mutation is another special word that is defined in the absinthe.schema, and we just need to type mutation do end, and as the query above, we're gonna have like a field. And this thing is going to be, the name of this mutation is going to be calling create post. Right now, we're not going to be passing a post as input, but we're going to return this thing, a post, but we are going to pass as input a different type of post that we did not create yet. So let's go put an end here. And the arg is going to be, we're going to receive an input, and the type of this input is going to be post input. Remember, what is this post input? If we save right now, we're going to receive an error, if I'm not mistaken. Recompile. Yeah, we did not define this post input in our schema. So now let's go here at the bottom, and we're going to create an input object. It's going to be calling post input. And basically what we're going to be receiving is these two fields here. Okay. And I think it's object input instead of input object. Object input. Let me check here. No, it was input object. Okay, there we go. It was like some error in my editor. So if we recompile now, we see that we have no more errors. And then we can finally call our resolve, which again is going to receive a function. 3 So let's go for entity, args, and context. And we can then pair match here on the args for the input. And inside our output, we're going to be seeing our post params. And now we just need to type OK, and we need to call the intro.graphql.blog.createPost, and we're going to be passing our post params here. Okay, so let's try out this. Let's see if everything is compiling okay. Everything's compiling fine, as we can see. So if we need to refresh this our page so we can get our changes, we can remove then this thing, because now we're going to be calling our mutation. And the first mutation is create post, so we can like do the autocomplete. This mutation is expecting an input, and this input is going to expect an object, and this object must have a name, which is like, let's go for second post. And then we can need a description, which is gonna be this is the second post description. Okay, and we need as return for this post, we're gonna be expecting the name, ID, and description. We see that oh yeah, that's right. The reason why this thing happened is because our function, our create post, already returned OK and the posts. So we don't need to grab this thing in an OK tuple. We just need to grab this thing as it is right now. So let's go back. Let's refresh. I think we don't need to refresh. Let's just run this once again. And there we go. We create our mutation with description. The ID is third because the second one was an error, and the name is second post. Okay, if you don't wanna like, if we don't want all this information here, we could just specify which ones we wanted. So let's go back to our query where we have like the get post by ID. We said we are gonna be passing an ID. of, let's pass the ID 3 so we can grab that post over there, but this time let's just grab like the name. Okay, so if you run, see, we just received the name, and if we go back to our first post, we got the name here. Right now we are going to take a look on how we can better organize our project, because right now everything is on the same file. Of course that we have like a very short amount of lines. We have 34 lines, but eventually once this gets bigger, we might need to refactor into different files. So let's do right now once our project is still very small. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is actually going back to the web folder of our application. We're going to create another file called schema, another folder called schema. We're going to put our schema file inside that folder. Okay, so there we go, our schema is here. And the first thing I'm going to be doing is actually extracting these objects into their own context type folder. So here we're going to create another folder called context. Okay, inside the context we're going to create another folder called blog, because this is a blog post. And here we are going to create the types.ex. Okay, so see, we are here in the web folder of our application, schema, context, blog, types. And here we need to use absinthe.schema.notation. Okay, and now we can open back our schema file. We can grab these objects here and paste into our blog types module. On the context folder, we're going to create here another file called types.ex. And inside here, we're going to be importing all the types of all our contexts. Okay, so again, we need to use absinthe.schema.notation, and we're going to be calling a function called import types. Okay, and now we need to pass the module of where the type we are importing. So let's open here our types, and this is the module which we wish to import. And then we can paste it here. And then on the schema file, we just need to import types, and we're going to be calling that module here. If we try to recompile our application, everything is working fine, and we can try our application here, and there we go, we have everything working as expected. But again, we can now create another folder. Oops. Another folder here. Instead of schema, we're going to be calling resolvers. Inside our resolvers, we're going to also have here the blog.ex. This is going to be resolvers for blog, and we just need to grab the schema. Whoops, schema.ex, and we're going to actually create these functions here. So this function, let's remove it from here. Let's paste it here. This thing is going to be called def get post by ID. We are going to change this, and I think we're good to go. And now we just need to alias this thing here in our schema. So alias blog, and now our resolve is gonna call blog dot get post by ID, passing the post by ID because it's already gonna call that function over there. We can do the same thing here for this function here. So let's grab this, delete. Let's go back to our function here. Let's paste this one. This is gonna be def create post do end, and back to our schema, we just need to add blog dot create post. And if we check our code here, let's run our just for sanity check, and we can run our mutation once again for create post, passing in input of an object. Whoops. Name gonna be like this is gonna be I think the third post with some description, and this is the description of the third post. And again, let's just like say that we want to return here the name. Okay, so let's run this mutation, and you see we got the third post. And if we check our server running, the post has been inserted. So on the last query that we are going to be creating here is a query for listing all our posts. So once again, let's create, instead of get post by ID, let's do a field like list posts, and this is going to return a list of post. Do end, and we're not going to pass in any arguments, so our resolve function will be pretty simple. So it's going to be resolve. We're going to be passing a function with entity args context do end. Actually, not do. It's actually like this. Do end. I think we're good. Yep. And the other thing that we're going to be doing is calling OK. We're going to be calling intro to GraphQL.blog.listPosts. And let me fix this thing here. So if we go back here and refresh our application, our page, sorry, got query, and we're going to be calling list posts, and just run this query here. You see that we just ask for the ID, let's ask for the name, and let's ask for the description. There we go. We have all our posts here. You see that we create the second post twice. And I think one last thing that we need to call here is actually refactor this resolver here. So let's delete. Let's go back to the resolvers. Let's paste our function. This is going to be def list posts here, and let's remove this one. And I think we are good to go. Oops, forgot to do here. And now on the schema, we're going to be passing add blog dot list posts. Okay, we are fine. And the only thing we need maybe here is alias the GraphQL.blog. We can remove this thing here. And that was like this first video on our series on GraphQL. I'm going to create, probably on the next series, we're going to be taking a look on data loaders and why we need data loaders so that we don't have a lot of queries hitting our database. Well, I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, bye.